Shabbat shalom, everyone. I'm a big sports fan, for those of you who don't know, and I was thinking about sports movies. Does anyone have a favorite sports movie that they want to share? So don't be shy, just jump in. Major League. Remember the Titans? Anyone else? Field of Dreams, The Natural, 1984. That's a good one. Little Big. All right, I hear a lot of baseball movies. I think there's more baseball movies than any. I was thinking cycling, Breaking Away, running, Chariots of Fire, beautiful movie. Baseball is a tough choice. There's a lot of options, but Field of Dreams really gets me in the kishkis. And for football, it's got to be Remember the Titans. Yeah, I never saw that one. Anyway. So the day that our son Matan, our youngest, got back from Camp Ramah in New England, for some reason, we had to watch Remember the Titans. I don't know why he suggested this, because he hadn't slept in 60 hours. I'm not sure what we were thinking. So we turned it on, and I watched it, I think, for my third time. I think it was the second time. And if you haven't heard of it, it's really an amazing movie about a true story. It's about the integration of the T.C. Williams High School in Alexandria, Virginia in 1970. And it portrays this story incredibly, just powerfully. At the beginning of the film, none of the blacks and whites get along at all. It's just absolute hatred for one another. And it's the story about a football team that is integrated, and how on earth can they all get together and work as one? Under the tutelage, and I would call it hard love, of Coach Herman Boone, played really well by Denzel Washington, and the assistant white coach, whose name was Bill Yost, who was played by Will Patton, who generously puts his kind of role, he was the head coach, and puts himself aside for the greater good and values and becomes the assistant coach. The two of them build a team, and they figure out how everyone can get along. Now, it's not easy. It's messy. There's even violence. It is a really hard process to bring people together who come from such different backgrounds. But they create something magical. They come together as one. They actually go through their season undefeated. I don't want to give away all the ending. So if you didn't see it, just cover your ears for what I just said. Should have said spoiler, but it's a post-spoiler. But more importantly than being champions of the league, they are champions of racial integration and harmony. And they teach their parents, their fellow students, the larger community, that even if you come from very different places, you can come together as one. They teach everyone that all people are fundamentally equal, and underneath all of our differences, we are the same. And they do it with a smile. I don't know if you remember their entrance song. You want to do it? Everywhere we go. No one knows it? People want to know who we are. We are the Titans. The mighty, mighty Titans. Okay. All right. You guys will work on it. And by Kiddush, I want to see a much better showing. It's a very compelling story, and it's well told. And it's rare that I see a movie more than once, but this one's really worth it. And if you haven't seen it, it's well worth your time. But the movie is also a good reminder about how much work we have left to do, how hard it is to overcome our racial stereotyping that takes place in the world, and that the work is not done. When Sharon and I visited last month, we were in Atlanta for a wedding. We visited the National Center for Civil and Human Rights, and it's an amazing museum with 250,000 thousands of documents and speeches all about the civil rights movement. And a big emphasis, of course, on August 28th, 1963, when over 250,000 people came together in Washington for the March for Jobs and Freedom, as it was called. And all of you are familiar with the famous speech that was given that day. I Have a Dream by MLK Jr., painting a different vision for the world. Now, to commemorate this, a couple of weeks ago, about tens of thousands of people came back together in Washington, and they called it a continuation, not a commemoration, but a continuation, because this work needed to be pushed forward. Given how the Supreme Court and national legislation over the last year have rolled back some of the progress for racial justice, much work remains. This time around, the group was actually more diverse and focused on other issues. There were more genders involved, other identities. They had the actor Sacha Baron Cohen, who came out and gave a speech against anti-Semitism. They had David Hogg, who is a survivor of the Parkland school shooting, came out and encouraged younger people, younger generations to run for office in response to gun violence. It was a day when various people all came together as one. As the Declaration of Independent States, I haven't read this in a while, but it's a good text to read. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, I would say all people, are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable, unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, where does this great text, this idea come from? It's actually really well rooted in our Torah and in our Tanakh and in our Hebrew Bible. The prophet Malachi, around the year 500 before the Common Era, says, "Have we not all one Creator? Are we all not children of the same parents?" The beginning of the Torah, of course, says that we're all created in God's image. And therefore, there's a fundamental equality. We have the same parents. Every human being is of ultimate value, of infinite worth. But if you look around the world, and you were just to kind of peruse any city or place, you would note that you don't see that. You don't see that everyone is actually equal. It's actually not the reality of the world we live in. Malachi, the prophet, is addressing not the way things actually are, but as they could be, as they should be. Judaism does not simply look around and notice the status quo, but it invites us to imagine a different world, to imagine a world where the values that we aspire to embody become the reality. Imagine a world where we're all treated the same, no matter what the color of our skin, our religion, our abilities, our gender orientation. But then, of course, it's not enough to just imagine it. It's not enough just to dream about it. We need to actually move our reality closer to it. The book of Leviticus is really instructive in this. It says, "Ukratim dror ba'aretz l'chol yoshvea." You shall proclaim freedom to all of its inhabitants. And then it's not just enough to proclaim the freedom. It introduces an amazing concept, the Yovel, the Jubilee 50th year, a year where all land would return to its original owners. So if someone had become too wealthy or too poor, things would be restored. A balance in society would once again happen. It was kind of a societal reset, a moment where communities could take a hard look at themselves and fix some of the imbalances that naturally occur over time. Now, here we are thousands of years later, and it's still true. This is not an easy thing to fix, but the Torah demands that we try. The Torah says this dream has to be part of what we do. It's something I think our society needs to think about and is thinking a little bit about it in terms of race, class, opportunities for people of all socioeconomic backgrounds. Now, you might be wondering, how does this relate to this morning's Parsha? All right, just a few of you were wondering about that. How does it relate to this moment on the calendar? Good questions. This morning, we are standing on the precipice of a new year. And this is, as I said earlier, the moment where we are supposed to reset ourselves. When we perform this tshuva, this turning into ourselves and this process of introspection, making ourselves hopefully a little bit closer to what we want to become. And so similarly, we remind ourselves that it's not only for us, but it's for our community, for our country, and for our world. We see how we can move all of those closer to the ideals that are set forth in our sources, closer to the dream of this Jubilee year. And that brings us to this reading, final reading of 5,783, which opens with a covenantal moment. Now, this moment is different from the one at Sinai, right? This moment is a bit more practical. At Sinai, it's a little bit more of this emotional, spiritual moment. Kind of these ideas and dreams are set out, a vision. But now the people are about to enter the promised land. Now it's time to get down to the great Yiddish word, tachlis. Now it's time to get down to brass tacks. How are we going to take these ideas and bring them into reality? And the Parsha reminds us of the goal, that we are all in this together, that we are all part of one society and one world. The text states, Atem Nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Adonai Elohechem, roshechem, shiftechem, zikeinchem. Missing one. Shiftechem, roshechem, shotrechem. Right? Kol Ish Yisrael. You are all standing today before Adonai, your God. Everyone, your leaders, your tribal leaders, your elders, right? Your officers, every householder in Israel. You, your children, your spouses, even the stranger within your camp, from the wood chopper to the water drawer. And for today's 2552 question, you are all invited to enter the covenant. Everyone, no matter what their occupation, no matter from what their position or job is in society, they are all invited to come together. And to accomplish that, we need all the tools at our disposal. We need the dreams and the vision, right? We also need the words, and then we need the actions. And sometimes you even need some inspiration from the story of a football team. Let this become the year when all of us come together to make the dream of equality a reality. Shabbat Shalom.